Okay, into the final subtopic of the course, and we're going to stay green here and environmental and look at recycling. Now, I think by this stage, most of this stuff will be probably common sense to you, but let's just quickly go through and see what you are expected to know. So there is a finite amount of materials on Earth. Remember, this is straight from the curriculum outline. Materials that can be recycled reduce the amount of new materials that need to be produced from the Earth's crust. Explain the advantages of recycling materials. So the two advantages of recycling materials, the two most important: less waste, so we need to send less stuff to landfill or dispose of in some other form. And if we're recycling more, there's less need to mine new resources from the Earth's crust. Hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory. Some objects are difficult to recycle. Explain the difference in the ease of recycling thermoplastic and thermoset polymers. So going back to what we looked at earlier in the materials topic. Thermoplastic can be melted down and remoulded. Remember, thermoplastic, they have the weak secondary interactions between the chain. They can be easily broken and reform, so these plastics tend to be much easier to recycle. Thermoset polymers will decompose or catch fire when heated, so that makes it very, very hard to melt them down and turn them into new materials. Composite materials comprise two or more constituent materials to produce a material with properties different from the individual components. Explain the advantages of using composite materials. So composite materials are composed of two or more other materials. I'm just repeating that definition, even though it was there. Now, the properties of materials complement each other to make superior material. So a classic example, carbon fibre. Carbon fibres are very, very light and rigid, but they are very, very fragile. They're also very sharp and dangerous to use. So trying to build materials just out of pure carbon fibre is very, very difficult. But if we basically set them in a resin, that resin is basically a polymer that holds all the fibres in place, and it overcomes a lot of those issues with them being hard to control and fragile. So we build a really, really strong, light material. You can probably think of other composite materials, but the carbon fibre one to me is probably the most obvious. And yeah, I guess the key thing in terms of answering these questions is that the materials complement each other to make a superior material. So you can take the best properties of two different materials and basically combine those into one. And sometimes the combined material is even better than the two component materials that make that up. But again, I don't think in these sort of questions you need to go into really, really specific details. Finally, explain the difficulties associated with recycling materials and objects comprising two or more different materials with different properties. So here we are talking about what's the problem with recycling our composite materials, and that is it's difficult to recycle as the components can't be easily separated. Once we take our carbon fibres and set them in a resin, it's very, very hard to then separate out the carbon fibres and the resin again to recycle and reuse those two components. Hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory, pretty much common sense, and that is, in terms of the content for Stage 2 Chemistry, the end. That's all, folks. Thank you for watching.